Welcome back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, what condition my condition was in.
Finally, after the long, cold winter and the long, boring spring, we have opening day approaching imminently, if that's the right way to say it. This is Roy Smalley's Chin Music. Roy Smalley is the former Twins All-Star, former Yankee, current Twins broadcaster, and longtime baseball lover from a baseball-loving and very accomplished baseball family. If you haven't listened before, Roy's great on old-time stories, new age observations, and music and pop culture and everything else. If you are new to the show, we think this is going to be a great show for you to listen to this season because I think the Twins are going to be very interesting this year. Unfortunately, a couple of the major developments out of spring training were not all that positive. Let's get to those and the makeup of the roster and everything else here shortly. We're doing a thank Berry Coffee, berrycoffee.com. Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent, Champlin, and Bite Squad, bitesquad.com. Promo code TalkNorth gets you your first delivery fee waived. We appreciate those companies for supporting this network, the TalkNorth.com network, and this podcast. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. If you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod, and please download before you listen. So, Roy, there's a pretty good vibe in spring training, but looking at the big picture, probably the two biggest developments for this team this spring were Miguel Sano suffering an injury that's going to keep him out of the first month or so, and Fernando Romero, who we both love as a talent, getting sent down to the minors. That's my view. Give me your expert view on this team as opening day approaches.
Well, I think both of those are the most significant developments. I think you're right about that. For me, the Romero not making the club is more significant than Sano. And I say that only because of the other power that the Twins have accumulated in the offseason, and what turns out now, what I thought was a nice acquisition turns out to be prophetic and a great acquisition, Marwin Gonzalez, to give them someone who can play third in Sano's absence and acquit himself quite well, most likely. So only for that reason. I mean, it would have been devastating had they no other third base option with any kind of offensive potential for Sano to go down. And it's really, really disheartening for him and the Twins and for all of us fans that happened to Sano. Once again, not going to play a full season, and that has been what's been going on, and that's a tough deal. But he'll be back, and hopefully he'll be back in shape, and it won't take him long to get in major league hitting shape and play the rest of the year out, whatever that becomes. The Romero thing is a big development, I think, because I really thought that not going out and actively seeking a closer in the free agent market, the Twins were thinking that a bullpen by committee in the late innings would certainly include that arm of Romero's. And so now it doesn't, and it raises, some questions about what's going on with him and what is going to be the plan going forward.
Absolutely. And you and I recommended Craig Kimbrell. Obviously, they weren't going to. I don't think they minded spending a lot of money on a short-term deal, but it's pretty obvious they were scared off by Kimbrell wanting a long-term deal or having the length made up for by a gargantuan salary in the short term. And, I even threw out the Bryce Harper thing at one time when I didn't think Harper was going to get the massive contract. What Harper ended up signing for, of course, the Twins were never going to do and probably shouldn't have done. The Kimbrell one still is an interesting debate because it feels like if you had Kimbrell, let's categorize things here, and I'll get your opinion. I feel like they have a good lineup. Could be a very, very good lineup if a few things click. I feel like they have plenty of quality fielding. I think they have plenty of defensive range. Castro being back bolsters the defense and game calling and pitch framing category. I feel like they're going to have a decent bench. I think they're going to have some good players available to them in the minor leagues. I feel like the rotation is going to be solid to pretty good, especially if Perez pitches the way I think he's capable of. But now with Romero out and no sure thing closer, although, you know, they certainly like Parker, that feels like a problem area for me, or at least an area of concern.
Yeah, I think so. I think that with, had Romero been shown in spring training, or whatever was going to take for him to make the club as a late inning guy, I think it defined roles well enough between Parker and Trevor May and Romero and Taylor Rogers that those four guys would be pretty good in the 8th and 9th innings. And however Rocco Baldelli wanted to use them, whether one guy was going to be the closer, and probably it would be Parker. But even so, I mean, you have on a given day, if Parker couldn't go, you'd have some arms left, right, that would, I think, set up the 8th and 9th innings reasonably well without, an established closer. But I was including Romero in there because I think for what now needs to be at least 3 batters, I think his stuff, projected to be, pretty nasty. And maybe something that I don't about what was going on with him, but that he wouldn't make the club. But that's a bit of a surprise. It's a bit of a surprise for me.
He had a series of really bad outings where he seemed to lose both command and some composure. And it's kind of like, when he was first came up as a starter, he was dominant. And then as soon as he had some trouble, he really went south fast. So I think they're a little worried by that. I think they want him to calm down. I think they might even feel like he needs to go dominate some lesser hitters to get his confidence back up. I still think they consider him a big part of the future, but it does say a lot that a team that needs bullpen help would send out on their best arm.
Yeah, the command thing is everything for him, and we saw him light it up when he came up as a starter, with basically 2 pitches, and then when he couldn't command those 2 well enough, first of all, if you can't command, it almost doesn't matter how good your stuff is. No matter how electric your stuff is, if you can't command in the big leagues, you're not going to be able to pitch. And to be a 2-pitch pitcher and lose command of even one, all you have to do is lose command of 1 pitch if you're a 2-pitch pitcher, and you don't have the arsenal to get big league hitters out. I thought as he worked on his breaking ball that he would be an effective short stint solution in the bullpen. But if he doesn't have command and he doesn't have command of his of his composure, as you say, then he's got to go down there, and now they need to figure out what they want him to do. That will be interesting too, to see what they give him as a role in AAA to dominate, to find his command, and if it's going to be interesting now to go to AAA where that stuff could dominate hitters and still not have a third pitch. Now, if he's in the bullpen, do you continue to work on that third pitch, or do they send him down there and say, you go down and learn to command your fastball and slider, and you'll be back up here as a late inning guy? Or do they run him back down there as a starter and say, we want you to work on your change on command of 3 pitches now? So that'll be an interesting development as well.
Right. I get the sense they want him to learn how to command his 2 pitches. I'm sure maybe he'll have time to do the work on the third pitch, but I think they view him as a reliever right now. I was never 100% on board with that. I always feel like you maximize the quality innings you can get out of any really talented pitcher. But I think they're sending him down to work on just commanding those 2 pitches and getting back up and helping out. More on Romero, more on Sano, more on the lineup and everything else and the hitting philosophy of this new team. Do want to thank BerryCoffee.com. So many of our sponsors across the network are local companies. They jumped on board because they like what we're doing. if you've listened, we do just honest. We don't honest sports talk. No fake debates. No yelling at each other. Kind of an open marketplace of ideas from some really smart people, and we have been able to attract some really cool local companies. Berry Coffee is one of them. It is a Minnesota-based, as they say on their website, a proud Minnesota-based coffee company. Steve Brem's a friend of Roy's. They are very service-oriented. They are very green, and they have all kinds of great products, both locally and from some of the national companies. They do have Caribou. They have the Berry Coffee blend. They go out and find their own beans. We love the Berry Coffee blend, but you can also get Starbucks or City Kid Java, Seattle's Best, Peace Coffee, Dunn Brothers. Again, we recommend the Berry Coffee, but if you have a favorite, they will most likely have it. They have Shangri-La silk bags. They have Shangri-La tea, Oregon chai, Bigelow tea, Good Earth tea, Tazo, Caribou tea, plus all the creamers, sweeteners, syrups, instant beverages you could ever want. It's great for restaurants and bars, but it's also great for office places, and it's also great if you have a home and just, you want to be able to make a great cup of coffee in your kitchen. And of course, Roy knows Steve better than I do.
Well, after the litany that you just described, I will just say, if they don't have it, you don't need it.
There you go.
You do need the service that comes with that complete array. So, our strong recommendation.
Absolutely. What do you think of the lineup? Because they have the potential to have 7, 8, 9 different guys hit 20 home runs. They have some speed. They have some athletic ability. They have some aggressiveness. They're going to strike out a lot, and some of the guys are going to offset those strikeouts with walks. Others aren't. So are you? And the line I kept hearing at Twins camp was, we think it's better to emphasize home runs than on base percentage, and everything they do is very analytic driven. And that's another area where I get it, but it's going to be really interesting to see if they can produce enough power to offset the strikeouts and maybe some guys who don't draw many walks.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think that's the right question. And look, if we just look at them defensively, they're going to be plenty good enough. The defensive outfield is terrific, and the infield defense will be plenty good enough. It's not going to remind anybody of some of the great defenses that you could throw out over the decades necessarily, but they're going to catch. So they're going to make the routine plays. They're going to make enough taking hits and outs away plays in the infield. It'd be good enough, and they've got enough offense now for Castro's defense behind the plate to be enough. Whatever he hits is going to be enough because they've got enough other offense, hopefully. And when I say hopefully, I still believe that though I think everybody takes I think the veteran players stay who they are, meaning Cruz and Scope and Marwin Gonzalez. I mean, I just think if they're just somewhere in the middle of the range of what they've always done, it's going to be very good. I think C.J. Cron is going to add a lot because I think he will hit the ball out of the ballpark, even though he will strike out. But the big question, and I'll throw Rosario now in the camp of veterans because he's done it very solidly for 2 years in a row, and he's the kind of guy. But he just knows he can hit. I know he can hit. He's going to hit. So it so much depends on Buxton, Kepler, Polanco, and whether they continue to take the steps toward ascending to what they're going to be, rather than what they've been turning out to be, what they are going to ultimately be. And what you really don't know about this lineup, it looks really good on paper because we're assuming that Cruz and Scope will be at, closer to the top of their game than the other direction. And we're assuming that Buxton, Kepler, and Polanco are going to be start moving toward the top of their potential rather than stagnating. And that's what you do out of spring training. You look at the lineup and you go, wow, look at this. We got Polanco and Kepler, and they're going to be great. And then Cruz,